An Orphic night, the world is cold. We stand surrounded, we are not alone. Within my reverie, there's holy light. Without a number, we stand and fight. An Orphic night, the world is cold. We stand surrounded, we are not alone. Within my reverie, there's holy light. Without a number, we stand and fight.
I spawn in and I immediately notice I have a starter bag in my inventory. Upon opening it, I'm given this thing called an igniter and a crafting station. And although I started with the igniter, I never actually figured out how to use these things, which is too bad. And as I was trying to figure it out, a modded slime approached me, which is cool. Okay, now that I got those immediate things out of the way, I just wanted to say up front that this mod has actually become one of my favorites, and when I search for it in YouTube, next to nothing appears. In fact, the streams that I did are some of the first search results, and this mod deserves so much more attention as I believe it's at least on par with Starlight River. So I want to enlist your help in spreading an, I guess, awareness of this mod by either commenting and liking this video so more people see it, or you can just download and play it yourself. For comparison, Starlight River has nearly 300,000 subscribers, while this one has a meager 10,000. And again, it's so good, but I guess I'll have to convince you of that, so let's get into it. A very short distance to the right, and I notice a treasure room in the ground below me. There's a cave that should give me easy access to it, but on my way there, this new background and twinkling effect pops up and these beetle-looking enemies are spawning on the surface. I have to assume that there's a biome just out of sight and on the other side of this cave, but I got to get to the treasure down here first. Upon looting it, I'm gifted 2 weapons, a melee and a mage one. And that's just real convenient, since sometimes getting a good weapon in early game can take a while. But I didn't expect them to be this gosh darn good. They sure made me feel powerful, so I went to the surface to fight the beetles. With them being a pre-hard mode surface enemy, I didn't expect much from them, but they have an AI I've never encountered before and are apparently very resistant to knockback. After dying, I headed back in that direction and the beetles came to strike me down again, but I managed to take them out just to get attacked by the miniature King Slime. And it's got quite a large health pool. Thankfully, with the weapons I have, I was able to juggle him, and he is a slime, so it's not like there ever was a real threat. And when he died, I was given a slime crown, which is also just very convenient. Back at the cave, I tried killing more beetles, but I'm still no match for them. So I build a basic structure and decide to head left, where I'm greeted by the corruption. This sword is able to deal with the corruptors without breaking a sweat. But on my journey across the purple wastelands, I noticed a glowing enemy below me. Mesmerized by the floating light, I head down there and am predictably attacked. Thankfully, these things aren't nearly as tough as the beetles. On the other side are some living trees, and on my way out from exploring them, I encounter more floating lights. But these ones spawn in the tundra biome. They drop this stuff called winterborn shards, which is just like a basic material, no real need to go into what they can make. What's perhaps more interesting is this exclamation point coming out of the ground. This is a harvesting mechanic the game adds. Basically, you'll find these exclamation points randomly around the world, and if you swing something at it, then a bunch of loot will pop out of the ground. It's never anything particularly rare, but you can get lots of goodies from these things, and I think it's a good way to remove some of the grinding from Terraria without removing it entirely in case you still want to, you know, still actually play the game and not just boss rush. As I head into the tundra, I'm attacked by more of the frost spirit things, and there's at least 2 different colors, but I'm pretty sure they're not different from each other other than the color. I also found out the spirits have different names despite not having much of a noticeable health or damage difference. The names are also kind of funny because they're called Winter Souls, and some of the variants include Winter Soul 2 and Winter Soul 3. And I'm not making that up, that's what they're actually called. I make it to the dungeon and use a return potion to drop off some supplies before continuing the journey. One thing about this mod is that there's so much content, my inventory kept filling up in no time at all. But it also made it super easy to get these potions of return, which is so very nice. Back at the dungeon, there's a desert on the other side, and then I made it to the ocean without finding anything interesting. So I returned home where I realized a treasure room has just been chilling right beneath my base this whole time, so I mine on over to it for my free loot. One thing I should mention is that these treasure rooms are surrounded by unmineable blocks. Perhaps something can break them, but even hard mode pickaxes didn't break this stuff. But you can still get inside easily enough, either by looting it from below or using the door built into these rooms. Inside the chest is a bow and a magic weapon I've already gotten my hands on. Oh, I should also mention that many of these chests have mana stars and heart crystals in them, and many of them also have life force potions. But now that I've explored the left side of the world, I really want to see what's on the right side. So I go onto the other side of the hill and come across this beautiful temple-looking structure, but the beetles prevent me from getting far. Perhaps I need better gear before going there, so I head underground where one of the treasure rooms must have had trouble generating correctly, but the loot is fine, and that's what really matters. And this one is a summon that I actually used all the way through pre-hard mode and into hard mode. If I had wanted to do a summon build, I probably could have taken this thing all the way through the mechs, but I'm not doing a summon build, so they'll just be a very good source of passive damage. A little further down, and there was a large building with an orange ore I could mine and a locked treasure chest. I've mentioned this in a different video, I think, but I don't like it when there are early game chests that are locked because oftentimes the loot in them isn't particularly good, and by the time you actually get a key, the contents of the chests are useless. But I actually already had a key, and as I played, I found myself with a massive surplus of these things. Just about all the modded enemies seem to drop them regularly, so I think they handled it well here. The chest also gave me a bow, which is super cool and shoots a bright light through walls, which, if for no other reason, is great utility for exploring. A little further down, and the structures are just getting bigger. It's so cool looking. I was excited to see what would be in the treasure chest, but when I approached it, I just picked up the chest as if it had already been mined. Guys? Is somebody else on the world? Perhaps not, but a tribal priest did give me a visit, and this thing is hectic. It floats all over the place, and I was so happy to have a bow that could shoot through walls and kill it from afar. These things actually spawn all the time with their large health pool. There were times it got a little annoying. When it died, it dropped a magic weapon that shot little balls on the ground and is a good weapon overall. It'd probably do wonders against worm enemies. Just above me is a vein of ore I haven't seen yet, and thankfully I was able to mine this stuff, and it's called Frial ore. I continue exploring the structure because it keeps going like some sort of dungeon, but then I got distracted by another modded structure, and then my first vanilla treasure chest, which gave me Hermes boots. After finding so many modded chests, it almost felt weird getting a vanilla one. At the bottom of this structure is a shining altar-looking thing that I ignored because I saw a glowing mushroom biome where one of those witches that I saw spawned and two-shot me. Forgetting the shrine I had found entirely, I tried to get past the temple on the right 2 more times, but still couldn't get more than a few feet into it before being swarmed and killed by a bunch of beetles. Maybe I need better armor or something. I made a dirt pickaxe from, I think, condensed dirt that this mod adds, and this pickaxe has very little mining power, but it's pretty fast, making elevator mining much more convenient. Though I also have a mod that doubles my mining speed, so results may vary. I found several more chests that had more of the same, but the free heart crystals was bringing me close to full health and mana in no time at all. I got back to the shrine, but nothing happened when I tried to interact with it, so perhaps that'll have to wait. There was a treasure chest nearby, but it wouldn't open and this dialogue appeared. Apparently, I can't open these chests, even if I have a key, unless it's night. What kind of harebrained decision was this? Why hide these treasure chest items behind the night? Why? I was killed by my own hubris, and when I spawned back at home, the Gint's army, one of the two, was invading. I don't really know what to say about these guys other than the fact that I think they look really cool, and they actually are easier than the Goblin army in my opinion. I love the feeling of these medieval knights invading too. It's really cool. They're not the most powerful, but this event is meant to be pre-King Slime, and at the end of the event, these effects go a bit heavy and a boss spawns. Again, pre-King Slime events. So he's not exactly powerful, but he is definitely a challenge from where he is in progression, and killing him ends the event. He dropped a treasure bag like the boss that he is, and I got this die that I can roll for more rewards. Wow, you have no maidens and no... I was not expecting that. A new NPC spawned as soon as the event was over, and this one has a dialogue option called "Marry Me?" So obviously I started spam clicking that, and the NPC gave me these cutesy responses but never says yes, which is totally unacceptable. She does sell some helpful stuff though, including some accessories I'm really going to need in the future. This NPC is actually super important, I just didn't know that yet, because I got distracted by other things and didn't really check to see what the accessories all did. With one boss under my belt and a good bow, I figured it was time to brave the temple once again, and this time I got more than 2 inches into the biome without dying. It would seem this place spawned on top of the desert, but I don't know if it's tied to the desert or just this general spot in the world. Deeper into the temple is a little bit of a maze, and it's honestly hard at times to know where you're going because some of the walls look quite similar to the blocks, so you don't know you can walk through a spot until you actually run into it and verify its wall or block. Down below is a bunch of treasure, and beyond a granite biome is a cool looking green biome. A filthy peasant, and one of my wall-piercing arrows actually traveled far enough to hit a larva in a hive somehow, and the queen bee killed me. But now I know there's another modded biome, so I dig into it and it seems it's just a regular cave that kind of looks different or cool, or at least that's what I thought until I came across yet another temple. Only problem is that I can't get inside. There's a wall blocking my path and says I need a key, so I suppose I'll need to return to this another time. I figure I'm strong enough to at least fight a boss or two at this point, so I take down King Slime using the slime crown I got at the beginning of the run. King Slime dropped a die as well, and this is something all bosses do. You get to roll a die and you'll have a chance to either be roasted by some text or else receive a treasure bag with a few goodies in it. I wanted to fight more bosses, but I have no vertical movement accessories. Heading underground, I found another golden chest with a cloud in a bottle, and the witches that spawned too much made it really hard to get that chest, but I got it. Now that I have one though, I head up the temple on the right side instead of going down into it. It struck me that something special might be up there, and on the way I began to feel like the spawn rates were on the same level as a blood moon. The gosh darn beetles are everywhere. Once I paid the path through them though, I reached the top and interacted with a shrine up there without thinking about it, and spawned a boss while I was low on health. Guess we'll see how this goes, and you know it's going to go well when the boss's first attack is a black hole that homes in on you and sucks you in. I wasn't actually doing that bad, but then I ran into some jungle spikes because a lot of the structures that look like this have jungle spikes around them for some reason, and I didn't check to see if there were any before interacting with the shrine. Not sure I could really beat that boss, I made my way to the other side of the temple to where the surface of that cool green biome is. I jumped into this lake that was there and was murdered in seconds by some debuff. Well, that's not very nice. Guess this means I'm going to have to bridge over the water, but obviously not over all of it. I ain't got time for that. There's several more of the same treasure chests near the surface here, and the biome looks cool and has some unique enemies, but not much else. I stumbled upon a sword shrine and got an enchanted sword, which is unironically rendered irrelevant by the modded weapons I've already found. There were no other modded biomes, or at least I thought so, until I came to the ocean, and there were these blocks floating in the sky. Well, I guess this place isn't exactly a biome, but it's sort of a floating temple with another shrine on top. Of course I interacted with it without thinking, and a dialogue appears about dancing and the night. I thought at this point that I should actually check the boss checklist and see if I've been missing anything. Turns out there's another boss pre-King Slime I haven't fought yet, and then one called Jack that's right after him. I forgot to mention it, but this mod is pretty much only pre-hard mode, but it's stuffed full of so much content. Boss checklist also seems to think I need this thing called a wandering essence to summon just about any of the modded bosses, and that information is wrong. It would seem this mod has not updated its info for boss checklist, or some auto-filling thing made a mistake. I wasn't sure where to find Jack though, so I went to the temple at the desert on a whim and stumbled upon the statue that looked a lot like the boss's sprite, and once I clicked on it, sure enough, Jack spawned. I thought I'd get blown out of the water though because the beetles were in the way, but then Jack was just dead all of a sudden while I was doing nothing but fighting the beetles. Well, guess he's a lot weaker than I thought he would be, and it seems weird that the enemies that naturally spawn here are more of a threat than he is. I didn't expect anything good from him since I'm a little past his progression point, but he did drop a sword that's actually really good. With Jack down, I figured I should fight the Sunstalker, the other boss that is pre-King Slime. And this is something that's actually confused me about several modded desert bosses. They are constantly really early in progression, but the desert has always felt like a biome to me that is suited for maybe mid pre-hard mode. I don't know, maybe I'm just bad about dealing with the desert. It didn't take long for me to find one of the shrines under the desert, but this one requires a summon unlike the others. Once I got it, I fought the Sunstalker, and I'm a big fan of the boss fight. He does some basic dashes, creates exploding light balls, will shoot some slow-moving projectiles at you, and he teleports around a bit. All things considered, this guy was much more difficult and interesting than Jack, and he has a sick death animation. At long last, it's time to get some armor, so I farmed in a biome I'm calling the Virulent because I needed to get some of these items called Virulent Plating. And once I got enough, I could make some armor. The armor itself was really good, but I think it's most interesting because it has no set bonus. Each piece of armor just gives a slightly better buff than vanilla ones usually do. And although it was cool to have, I replaced it right after making it because I noticed a better armor set that I could make and just needed to farm some stars, and now I got Celestia armor. That does have a set bonus, and each piece of armor gives crazy bonuses. This armor is actually broken. I get extra health, more summons, more mage and summon damage. It's a bit absurd, and instead of there being 4 variants, there's only 2. One set is for mage and summon, while the other is for ranger and melee. So it's truly a multi-classing armor. With this, I figured the boss in the desert, called the Forgotten Puppet Deidus, or whatever it was, the one that was above the temple, would be within my reach. This boss summons the mini black hole that I saw before. It creates a light attack of some sort, but I never got hit by it, so I'm not sure what it is or fully what it does. After that, he did a large melee attack while launching several Betsy-looking fireballs in the air, and the attack just looks awesome. And then I realized that the light attack I just mentioned is actually some sort of axe, and when it bounces around, it makes that lighting effect. He also drops little fireballs on the ground that are hard to see. He doesn't do these in any particular order as far as I could tell, but he did always lead with the black hole attack. Super cool boss, and he drops this thing called the Gothavia Seal that says to take it to the depths of the Virulence and that something awaits me there. I'll get to that another time, but for now I'm focused on the crafting recipes I've missed. I made this bow that looks really cool, although it's a little bit weak. I found a fire powder that's actually sold from an NPC, and it's a good starting weapon, but I'm past that by now. Okay, guess I'm distracted from crafting again, and now I'm fighting the Eye of Cthulhu with the new bow. It's good, but the bow I've been using has some homing effect, and the magic circle in front of it actually does contact damage, so I found it just to be better. When I killed the eye, there was a new material that it dropped, so it seems that I'm going back to crafting again. The first thing I found was a recipe that combines the enchanted sword I found earlier with the new material that the eye dropped, and it makes this really cool sword that shoots projectiles that were kind of okay at first, until I actually encountered an enemy, and the projectiles, once they stopped, would home in on the enemy. I used the sword to absolutely destroy the Eater of Worlds that I'm pretty sure just about any of the modded weapons I found would obliterate. After the worm was down, I found another recipe for a sword that looked kind of cool. I crafted it without thinking about it, but was in for the shock of my life when I used it. This was not a sword. It was a clicker class weapon, because wherever I click, the sword will attack. No wall, no enemy, no nothing could get in between me and my target. And better yet, if I drag the mouse a little bit as I click, the sword will move along the mouse's path and deal damage the whole way down. This thing is a bit busted, you might be thinking, and the short answer is yes, but it's also not entirely OP, since it has very little knockback and doesn't actually do that much damage, which has been and continues to be a theme. Weapons with totally busted functionality that have incredibly low damage, because that's the only thing keeping you from having endgame weapons in pre-hard mode. Now, I made some gravitation potions since I haven't explored the skies yet, and I was curious if I'd find any modded structures up there. I flew around for quite a while and only found a regular sky island, so I assumed there wasn't anything after searching the entire left side of the skies. But about halfway down the right side, I started coming across mini sky islands with more starter loot. What the? No! No! Oh wait, I have a gravitation potion. These ones even had wormhole potions, which is so nice of them to give you, assuming you're playing with friends. Skies explored, I returned to the temple that the seal, the last boss dropped, should allow access to. Sure enough, it unlocks some doors that let me in, but the enemies that spawn here have large health pools and deal a whole lot of damage. In many ways, they function similarly to the Ichor Stickers, only now they're in pre-hard mode and move through walls. There's treasure here too, but nothing crazy. It's a rather small temple, but it's dark and you can't mine anything, and there is a little bit of a maze. Not much of one, but with these two factors, as well as the fact that the walls look a lot like the blocks, resulted in me being lost for quite a while before I managed to make it to the boss room. Excited, I clicked on the shrine, but then this text appears saying I need a steel eye or higher to fight the boss? I have no idea what a steel eye is, or if that's how it's pronounced. I just assumed the seal that let me into this place would let me summon the boss. It also says that the steel eye is needed or else I can't dodge certain attacks, so presumably it's an accessory. It's not something that I can craft either, so I'm a bit concerned I won't be able to find this thing. Part of me is really annoyed it actually requires me to have an accessory to fight the boss, but we'll see why it does later in the video. I guess I'll go to the next boss on the checklist, which is called the Singularity of the Moon, and apparently it spawns somewhere in the underground tundra. On the way there, a harpy dropped Cloud Skaters, which is basically Feather Falling Potion as an accessory, and it's pretty nice. I realized on my way there that I couldn't actually summon the boss in the tundra because the key requires Hellstone, with that key also being the summon. So I make a quick stop to the underworld. As I make the Hellstone, I spot a sword that I can craft, and it looks cool, and sure enough, it is cool! I can't get over just how beautiful this mod is. I also made a mage weapon that has some of the best homing I've seen in Terraria. I almost switched my entire build to mage because of this, but it was the only good mage weapon I've gotten at this point. This mod adds plenty of weapons for every class, but it does seem to have more melee weapons than any other. Or maybe the swords are just easier to craft because there's always more of them available than other weapons when I'm crafting. That's at least what I'm thinking here. When I reached the tundra, I wasn't sure where I could summon the boss. If I just needed to be in the tundra or if I needed to find a shrine. What am I saying? It requires a shrine. After some mining, I see sparkles that are super pretty, but then I am suddenly afflicted with the Frostburn debuff. I never found anything that made me immune to this debuff, so I basically had to tank the damage. There are also enemies here that make surviving harder, but on the bright side, they aren't super strong enemies, so it's doable. All the same, I mined around the biome because the key that summons the boss has a text in the description that says to use it at the bottom of the abysm under the ice, which is not very helpful. And I also assume that this blue sparkly place is the abysm. It had me thinking that perhaps I was supposed to use the key under the tundra, or perhaps there was something down there. After a bunch of searching, I found nothing. So I mined back on up into the abysm, hoping that I would find something, and sure enough, the temple I thought would be maybe below the tundra was inside the abysm biome. And it looks just as cool as the other temples I've found thus far, but it's also darker than all the others. So sorry you can't see anything, this is just how it is. On the bright side, this temple has different kinds of chests than the others have, and I've been able to pick up some neat weapons. The first two didn't actually have weapons, but the first one that did shoots these cool stars. There were of course more. One shot little sickles, one was a powder, which I think is supposed to be used with the igniter cards, but I never figured out how to make those work, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. I found a new bow that's a slight upgrade from the one I got before, but it doesn't shoot through walls, so is it really an upgrade? I found my way into the boss arena and figured I'd just summon the Singularity. The fight was awesome, but short-lived because I touched the main body and it did 8,000 damage. Okay, don't touch it. Let's try that again. When it summons, there are 5 little things that circle around it, and you have to destroy these before you can deal damage to the boss's main body. Most all of its attacks are ranged. One is very much telegraphed and it shoots short-range projectiles, but it can also shoot some projectiles that are faster and not telegraphed at all, really. At some points it'll charge at you while also shooting 3 projectiles in a fan formation. There's another time it shoots while telegraphing with the purple cone thing again, but it'll make this charging sound, and this one shoots a bunch of fast projectiles that are harder to dodge if you're caught in the crossfire. This boss also has a Moonlord laser of sorts. He only uses it from the shrine position, and it only ever shoots on the top half of the arena. So all you have to do to avoid it is go below the platforms. But it's not nearly that simple, since there's a bunch of water down there, and if you touch it, you get the Frostburn debuff. So you still have to be careful. It also seemed to me that if he gets close to you, that he actually has a gravitational pull that will pull you towards you, but it's kind of hard to show that. It has to be experienced. When he died, he didn't drop a treasure bag, weirdly enough, so I saw the loot immediately. Void Blaster! And sword. If it sounds like I'm losing my mind, it's because I never had a mind to begin with. But also, I'm just really enjoying this mod a lot. The sword was actually a little disappointing, but I also got a gun, which might as well be a significantly more powerful mini shark. I killed Skeletron with ease using it, and while I was in the dungeon, I discovered that the Abysm and dungeon were generated side by side, which meant I could get the Frostburn debuff while exploring the dungeon. The temple with the moon singularity also happened to spawn in the middle of the tunnels deeper into the dungeon, which meant I couldn't go any deeper without mining around the temple. So the generation is a bit broken, but I don't really need anything in the dungeon anyways. Back at home, I discovered a modded crafting station I could make, which allowed me to make runes, which are a neat accessory. I use them a little bit, but they have cool and kind of unique effects. The next boss, the one who spawns from the shrine at the blue temple over the ocean, well, you need several items to make the summon. One is a lantern that you can get from a treasure chest I initially missed on the temple grounds. Another major part is dropped from the moon singularity, and another ingredient is the obsidian rose. Yes, you need an obsidian rose to make this boss summon. At the very least, it's not a consumable summon, but this is probably my biggest critique of the mod. Why are you making me farm an obsidian rose for a boss summon? When I finally got my hands on one, I summoned her for an awesome boss fight. But I want to skip over it real quick because she actually ran away near the end of the first fight. Be aware, bosses in this mod will run away if you get too far away from them. Maybe not all of them, but several will. Let's summon her again. Now when you summon her, this dialogue appears, and now this feels a little like an RPG. She spawns a bunch of projectiles once the text is gone, so never stand next to her during this part. Now this boss doesn't have too many different attacks in the first phase. There's a melee attack, and she'll move around and dash at you while she's using it. She'll shoot sparkly projectiles that have some minor homing. She'll summon little bat minions that will get out of hand really quickly if you don't deal with them. And she'll summon sword minions, which are more dangerous, but it seemed to me that they naturally despawn after some time, or maybe I destroyed them without noticing. She can also summon a little ghost of herself, but I actually usually killed it without noticing it was there, so I don't know what it does. In the second phase, she'll teleport at you and then shoot these music walls outwards that stop at a certain point and then shoot musical notes up and down. So you have to get up and over these walls and away before the notes go up, or else you'll be stuck in confined quarters. She also shoots some star-looking projectiles, but the real star of the show is her sky beam. So I want to run into it. I want to know what happens. What happens if I get into... Oh! 400 damage! Oh! Curiosity, kill the cat! Curiosity, kill the cat! Curiosity, kill the cat! And so I died. Random thing, but I'm the kind of person that plays games while running straight lines from A to B. It takes a lot for a game or a mod in this case to make me curious, let alone curious enough to walk into a massive sky beam. That's the best endorsement I can give this mod. I took her down on another attempt, and she drops a sword that shoots homing projectiles. It's basically one of those, it's technically a melee weapon, but it's actually more of a manaless mage weapon or ammo-less ranger weapon. It's cool though, but not actually particularly stronger than anything I already have. I killed the Wall of Fresh super easily, destroyed Demon Altar's mine for hard mode ores, but there isn't much more the mod adds. There are a few things, but as I mentioned earlier, this is primarily a pre-hard mode mod. But there are at least 2 more bosses I have yet to fight. One of them is an early pre-hard mode boss that can only be summoned during a blood moon. But I didn't get one of those, and the other boss is just after Queen Slime, and the only place I could think of to summon it was at the temple that says I need a steel eye. I even returned to the first initial shrine that I didn't even interact with, and ended up mining the altar, and in the text box it says I'm not supposed to be able to collect it. I have no idea what this thing does. A bit lost, I figured I'd look into crafting some modded hard mode weapons, and I came across this sword that looks super cool, although it does seem that it's actually a pre-hard mode weapon. Its utility is broken and has a slightly higher damage output than some of my other stuff, so I decided to hold on to it. There was another sword that shoots water circles, but I think it is also a pre-hard mode weapon. There was another pre-hard mode gun that goes boom, a mage weapon that isn't all that interesting but still neat. The weapons in this mod are just stupidly cool, and so are the structures. Everything is cool, although some of the lighting textures do have troubles. At long last, I got a blood moon, and the boss is summoned by killing a blood cyst, and these things are pretty easy to find. I'm definitely overgeared for this fight, and it's actually not the most fancy boss in the world. I'll let you discover this one on your own though. It's got a certain secret that will definitely confuse you on a first go. I spent quite a long time after that trying to figure out what a steel eye is, and after a while I poked down and checked to see if there was a wiki somewhere, and by some miracle I found something, and I discovered the steel eye is actually an accessory sold by the NPC I can apparently marry. I could have had this thing forever ago. I just didn't check all the things because I got distracted. That kind of annoys me, but I have it now, so let's see what happens when I interact with the shrine now. A text box appears, the boss jump scares me, and then the boss one-shots me in 30 seconds. Also turns out this boss is a 2-for-1, and it's not nearly as simple as the twins. In order to fight it, I have to be inside this confined area, and one boss charges in circles, while another hops around shooting things seemingly at random. Oh, I should also mention what the steel eye actually does. It makes you invincible for the duration of the dash it gives you. It doesn't let you attack while dashing, so that helps balance it out, but actually the new sword I have kind of breaks this rule somehow, so I can attack while I'm also being invincible. This boss was leagues more difficult than any of the bosses, but part of that is just how some of the mechanics work. For one, the big head body can one-shot you if you're not constantly dodging around, but it also drops little flares that only do 1 damage but knock you back, and thus you have to ensure you're flying over or hovering over the ground almost all the time. The other part of the boss, this lady, hops around and does over 100 damage on contact and also shoots walls of projectiles. This is what you need the steel eye for primarily, since you can't dodge this without using that accessory. Only problem is, after a couple of fights, the dodge stopped working. I tested it over and over again, removed my Shield of Cthulhu, everything I could think of, and it simply didn't work anymore. And this wasn't a case of me doing a dumb, it actually just didn't work. I was about to give up, but then I remembered this thing is a material, and I hoped that crafting the upgrade would reset the bug or what have you. Sure enough, it did, and maybe saving and quitting could have done the same thing, but I made the upgrade instead. I've basically already said everything that this boss does at this point too. It's not a complex boss, just one that makes you thread the needle a bit. No-hitters might enjoy it. I destroyed the terrifying head, leaving only the lady, and she doesn't really change, but she does summon an axe that hardly moves at all, and I can only assume it'd destroy me if I got close to it. Thankfully, I didn't need to. At this point, I've beaten all the bosses that are on boss checklist, but that didn't seem right to me. I extracted the texture files and looked at the bosses that are in the textures, and I saw several more bosses there than the checklist was telling me existed. So unsure as to if I missed them or what to do, I decided I'd summon them in using cheat sheet. And the first one I summoned taught me why it's not available. I love how the boss looks, but it would seem that once it attempts a certain attack, this error will appear and the boss goes away. I did kill it once using cheat sheet to kind of auto kill it as well, and it dropped nothing other than hearts and potions, I think. So I presume this boss is in the game, but not quite finished yet. But there was also this flower ninja person boss who appears in one of the only other Lunar Veil mod videos I've found, and in that video, the flower person spawns in the place that the last boss, the kind of twin bosses, spawned in. It's a neat fight, and it inflicts you with debuffs you can't avoid. The boss is also complete, so I'm not sure if I just missed it, or maybe the altar I was able to mine is able to summon it, but I never knew how to actually summon the thing. I never saw in the crafting recipes any boss summons, so I have no idea. Maybe it was removed from progression, but wasn't actually removed from the game files. I don't know. But what I do know is that I need this boss back into the regular experience because it drops a weapon that does this. Weapon? Oh, what the heck? Oh. Wait, what? And that's Lunar Veil. This video turned out really long, but that's just because there's so much gosh darn content in this mod that was awesome, and I had to share it. This video was even longer than a lot of my others, while also being only pre-hard mode with very little in hard mode. It deserves so much more attention, and hopefully this will be my little part in giving it the attention it deserves. If you play modded Terraria, I implore you, try it. You won't regret it. And if you're a Terraria content creator, why did you let me get to this one first? Make a video. I demand you.